So thank you, Barbara and Jerry, for doing this. And where and when were you born?
I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 1947.
What month? I'm interested in people's
March.
answers.
March 10th.
So that is
Pisces.
Pisces. Oh, happy birthday!
You next week.
Next week.
Next
yeah.
week.
Happy birthday. Why don't you have an accent, a Southern accent?
Well, I was taught by, I've been asked that question since I was about 16. I was taught by nuns from St. Louis, and I think I must have learned that that's how you should talk.
You don't say y'all, or what
I
amazes
say
me.
y'all. And when I'm around my family, well, now I'm faking it. But anyway.
No,
yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah, I have a friend who I taught with who's in Louisiana now, and they say, all y'all. Come on, all y'all. That amazed me. Jerry, what about you?
Also Louisiana, but North Louisiana. Monroe, as we would say. Monroe, other people might say. December 6th, 1946. So I'm a Sagittarian.
Vegetarian. And are you adventurous and forward-looking and ask deep questions?
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah.
Barbara, are you sensitive and maybe sometimes can think of both sides of an issue?
To a fault.
Problem making decisions, I would say.
Yeah, that would be true.
Say a word about your career education paths. What kind of work have you done? How did you get there?
I've always wanted to be a teacher, and I entered the community that taught me, the School Sisters of Notre Dame, primarily to pursue that career. And I ended up being, they sent me to graduate school. I went to graduate school, got a PhD in English literature, came back to Louisiana, left the community after a little while, and then I got into women's studies, and I taught at the University of Mississippi and then at Loyola for the rest of my career. And I retired, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
And so your emphasis was in English?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Literature, English literature, Southern women writers. Did a lot of work on Kate Chopin.
Uh-huh. How have you seen, or did you, students change over the years that you've taught? Because some people say that generations Y and Z are anxious, fragile teacups, helicopter parented. I wonder what you see in terms of patterns like that in generations.
I guess there was a little bit of that. I didn't find it. I didn't find that an enormous shift. But part of what happened to me is first I taught regular undergraduates at the University of Mississippi, and then when I first came to Loyola for the bulk of my career there, I taught adult students, which I adored. And then they closed that college, and I began teaching kids again. But the younger people certainly were much needier by the time I got to that second shift in teaching 18-year-olds. But I didn't find it huge. I really didn't.
Needier in terms of wanting more hand-holding?
Yeah, they were just more anxious. They just seemed more anxious and worried about their grades, and their lives were so complicated and things like that.
When can you pinpoint when it started to shift to them being more anxious?
Well, like I said, it's hard. It would be hard because I also made the shift from adult 20-somethings and 30-somethings to 18-year-olds, and it was it was a little blurry for me. But that would be about 2006 or 7 when I made the shift.
Mm-hmm. And so, were you a sister or?
Yes, I was a school sister of Notre Dame for 10 years.
And what made you decide not to be a sister anymore?
Well, it was complicated. Had nothing to do with him. But I realized that I needed a little more emotional intimacy than the convent was going to give me, and that was the primary reason. There's a story, but that's okay. That's the primary reason. And so I left, and I never had any regrets. I loved the years that the convent gave me were very fulfilling. There were wonderful people, women that I got to know. It was a very smooth. Well, not in the moment. It wasn't a smooth transition, but I never looked back.
Did you think of yourself as a bride of Christ and wear a wedding ring? That always interests me.
I really dislike that imagery a lot. I really didn't think of myself that way. I didn't. I think you were not raised Catholic. Were you raised Catholic?
No.
Yeah.
Right. But am I right that I saw on your webpage that your PhD is in religious studies?
Right. Right.
So, well, that's a different story, but.
Yeah. What religious brands?
Well, I was at the University of California at Santa Barbara, and it was kind of a history of religion, very broad. So there was no particular focus. But I did my dissertation on the religious ideas of Harriet Beecher Stowe. So I focused on New England theology in the 19th century.
But what about your personal background? What
I was raised in the Church of Religious Science, Unity, the New Thought from the 19th century. We create our lives. We sang, Jesus loves us, for we are strong as he is strong.
Wow. Wow.
So no guilt or shame in that.
That's good.
Jerry, what about you? Your education career path?
Where to begin? I ultimately became a lawyer, and that's been an identity for 20 years or so, but it was a long time getting there. I was claiming to be a writer when we met, and working various odd jobs, many of which have amused my friends for years. I was a wine salesman. I did a lot of things. I drove a taxi in New York before I came back to New Orleans in '73. I was in the Army. I was a helicopter pilot in the Army before New York, and then I was married to another person that I married right out of, actually, while we were still students at LSU in the 60s. And but that was breaking up as we came back here in the early 70s, and then did a lot of things. When Barbara and I met, there's a much longer story, but her father was involved in an environmental lawsuit as a consequence of pollution on family property going back years, even at that point. And I began to become involved in helping him try to deal with that problem. I had also worked in the public relations business, and so I got him a lot of publicity and became involved in environmental organizations and helping start environmental organizations, and ultimately went to law school and had a job for 5 years at Tulane that was one of the few good paying jobs I ever had in my career, and didn't like it much and just quit finally 20 years ago. And Barbara's been the breadwinner, and I've been the cook for a long time now.
Do you have kids?
No.
And not from your first marriage, Jerry?
No.
I want to say as an end note, my friend who I mentioned lives in northern Louisiana, that she taught with me at Chico State. She got really involved in the Camp Mendon. I don't know if you heard about that. The Army left munitions that were really toxic.
Yeah, I do know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, her name is Dolores Blaylock, and he's done a lot of work on those kind of toxic sites.
Probably know people who know her. I don't know her myself, but I imagine I know people who know her.
Yeah, she works with a chemist, a woman whose name I've forgotten, but I'm sure.
Wilma Subra.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not practicing law now at this point, or doing environmental work?
I'm retired. I'm doing nothing, basically. I don't start till noon, I tell people.
But you said you cook.
I do cook, yes.
And is it a creative thing for you, or is it something that you do as a...
Yeah, I like it. I like cooking.
Yeah, it was a, I have to add, it was a wonderful thing when I realized that he liked to cook because I didn't particularly. We'd kind of shared the chores, and then he's not working and I am, and he takes over the cooking, and I'm thinking, woohoo, this is great.
What about now that you're not going to school to teach? How do you divide up housework and cooking?
Well, let me say,
Yeah.
one of the secrets to our relationship, one of the few things we ever really, disagreed, argued about much was housekeeping. So how many years ago, 25, 30 years ago,
30.
I don't know, we had the brilliant idea to hire housekeepers. And that would be one of my bits of advice to young people as soon as they can afford it. It's not that expensive. They only need to come a couple of times a month. It makes a whole lot of difference and solves a lot of problems. So, we kind of share to a degree washing clothes and washing dishes and stuff, but the housekeepers clean the bathrooms and vacuum and, pick up, after we picked up, and, dust and all that other stuff that we don't do.
It creates a job. So I think of it as,
Yeah.
A student who needs money would be happy to help out. Yeah.
And there are lots of, in this town, there are lots of Hondurans. We're the largest Honduran city outside Honduras.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Long-standing connections between New Orleans and Honduras through the banana trade, basically.
Oh, wow. So Jerry, what did you learn from your first marriage that you could apply to making your second? How long have you been married now?
We've been married 41, 42 in May.
Yeah. Yeah, but we've been together for 45 years.
Okay, so Jerry, what did you learn from that first marriage?
Interesting question. That wasn't on the list, so I hadn't thought about that. Probably to listen more and to be more careful about the person you pick.
Why do you think you picked her?
The first wife? Hormones, and we had a lot in common in that we were both from North Louisiana, going to LSU. Similar backgrounds, cultures. And just a friend of ours who's a sociologist says it's a scientific fact that you marry who you meet when you're ready.
When your hormones are connecting.
Or you just decided, I'm ready to get married.
It's a timing thing.
Yeah. And you look around and you say, okay, I'll take that one.
That's the best of the pick. But Jerry, how did you get to New York? And
I got in the Army through ROTC. That's a longer story that we won't bother with. But anyway, then I discovered I could go to helicopter school and delay going into the Army. This is 1968. Delay going to Vietnam by at least a year, and hey, the war would probably be over by then, I thought. Well, it wasn't, but I at least went through helicopter school, and so then I'm sent to Vietnam, and that wife, with whom we are still friendly, in fact, I owe her a phone call. She lives here in town. We still relate to some degree. We don't see each other a lot, but she was a painter, an aspiring painter, and really wanted to go to New York. So we moved her to New York as I left to go to Vietnam, and then when I came back, she was still in New York. Had another year to go at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, so I went to Fort Bragg. She stayed in New York, and I went back and forth. And then when I got out, we were there together for a year and a half as things, began to fall apart. But it took years. I mean, it took another 2 years after we got back here before we separated and began the divorce process and that sort of thing.
And what was the impetus to say this isn't working? What made you both realize that?
We just weren't relating, man. I mean, we just was not a working relationship.
So
It's been a long time.
what have been the challenges for you two? I mean, you don't have housework challenges, you don't have child rearing issues. Where have been the areas where you've had to grow, shall we say?
That question was the hardest one. I kept thinking, where have been the big challenges? And it feels like there weren't any big challenges. It was all little challenges. It was all, will you please not turn off those lights, before, or would you remember to turn off the lights? I mean, it was those small kinds of irritations that I've had that I guess we, have had to accommodate and adjust. I mean, there were some big decisions, changing jobs and moving and buying a house.
And children and not having children. I mean,
that was a big thing.
That was a big thing for
that
a while.
That's true.
And my probably midlife crises, sort of aimlessness for 20 years before I went to law school. And sometimes, depression about all that. I'm sure I was a problem. But,
well,
we got through that.
We did. I mean, and as far as that goes, I mean, in the beginning, I knew I wanted a career. I was going to teach. I was going to work. He wasn't really working very regularly. Was going to be a writer at that point, and that was fine. It was like, you live on my salary, cool. I don't care. And it didn't really bother me. It really didn't. And you were always pretty content with that.
Yeah.
So the issues were mostly roommate issues of lights on and off.
Yeah, I think so. And then miscommunication. Not reacting to each other badly, but. Yeah, I mean, frankly, we did that yesterday. I mean, we've been kind of mean at each other, and then we said, what's going on here? Talking about it like that.
And what was going on? What did you figure out?
Well, I'm just reacting to what feels like a very critical kind of response to stuff, but I know that's my stuff. It's not what he means, but that's what I'm hearing. I don't know. What do you think was going on?
And my tone sometimes apparently is, what's the word?
Military?
No, that didn't take very well. He didn't stick. The military didn't do much for him.
Military.
But know it all. There you go. Know it all. Okay. Well, you don't take that one, but anyway. Something like that.
Here's an issue. Barbara is the oldest of 6 children. I am the youngest of 7.
Wow.
I say she's used to giving orders and I'm used to ignoring them.
Right.
And it works.
But there is some of that dynamic that Barbara is accustomed to being the big sister. All her siblings are sisters.
Wow.
And I'm like, come on, man.
That's improbable to have 6 kids of the same gender.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I have to say, I mean, there were times when I missed a brother, but since I was the oldest, not really, because I knew very well I would be displaced by any little brother that came along. And the other thing is, sisters are wonderful. Sisters are wonderful. I adore one of my sisters and love all the rest, And
they're very loud when they're together.
We are. We have a good time.
They laugh and...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. Barbara, do you think that you learned how to get along with someone from being in the convent? Because it seems like you're in fairly close spaces, so you learn, and from having all your sisters, you learned how to not step on someone's toes or something.
Well, I guess that's true. I mean, I certainly had to get along with other living mates, my sisters. I mean, we traveled on each other's toes all the time, constantly drawing lines in the middle of the room. Do not cross this line. And of course, immediately everyone did. Don't use my clothes. Nonsense. And the convent was certainly a much more regulated place. I don't know. I've never really thought about it, but I've certainly had a lot of experience living in groups. That's true.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to say a word about why you decided to leave? Because that seems like it's a good story. The convent.
Well, okay. Are you going to edit the YouTube?
I can.
Okay, because I don't know that I'm comfortable telling. I
You know
don't
what
mind
I'm gonna
telling the
do?
story in print. Huh?
I'm going to turn off the recording. So what do you two do for fun? Masters and Johnson said pair bonding is based on the shared memory of good times. So how do you pair bond?
Travel.
Yeah, we travel a lot, especially the last 10, 15 years or so.
Yeah, we love to travel.
We're planning travel. That's what I've been doing the last few days, planning a trip to Hawaii that we're going on at the end of March. So, yeah, we've been a lot of places.
But we also, I think we like to entertain. We like to hang out around friends. We give a lot of parties,
We're part of a fairly large and old circle of friends here in town, dozen people or so who get together pretty regularly, and we entertain and they entertain, and and we enjoy the city. I mean, that's something we both share. I mean, New Orleans is a great town. We don't know where else we'd live, and it's been weird the last year, but normally there's great food and music and festivals and
Mardi Gras
and stuff to do.
Yeah, and I think we're also both. I'm not sure this is for fun, but both committed to our families in various ways. So, and we share that sort of. We share that as something that's important to both of us, each of us.
You made the decision not to have children because you'd kind of been there, done that with all those siblings, or
that was part of it. That really was part of it, and really and truly, I think for me anyway, it was like we made the decision in our mid 30s or so, and I could not think of a good reason to have children. And every one of them seemed a little selfish, a little, why would you do that? And it was also kind of an environmental piece, really. It was thinking, if I can't think of a good reason, why would I impact the world like that? I don't know. You have to speak for yourself. But.
Well, I just never had any real. I was not anti having children, but I never had any great desire to have children. So I was not encouraging, I guess. Sort of felt like it was Barbara's decision, and as we said, she's not really good at decisions. So,
That's true. So we struggled with that, but it was certainly the right thing.
Some people say that we tend to pick the familiar. We repeat or go in opposition to our parents' marriage. So how would you say your family of origin, parents, have influenced how you relate to each other, your selection of each other?
Well, the question that I was thinking about that I think was in the prep stuff was sort of how is your spouse like your parent or something like that. How is Barbara like my mother, for example? Mm-hmm. Well, not a lot, except that my mother was a very social person involved in, taking care of people and the community and that sort of thing. And Barbara's a very social person. Barbara's a very extroverted, out there person. I'm more an introverted, I'm fine, leave me alone kind of person. But, that's similar, but not like at all, I guess. My family, Barbara my family totally different things. I mean, and part of it is this North Louisiana, South Louisiana, Catholic versus Baptist in my case, drinking, not drinking, partying, not partying, dancing, not dancing, those kinds of things. But as how we're alike, I mean, we have similar intellectual interest and political interest and travel interest and interest in New Orleans and I don't know, that sort of thing. And, hormones are important too.
Even in your mid-30s.
Even in your mid-70s.
Parker, what about you, your parents?
Well, what I think about, I think in many ways Jerry is very unlike my father. On the other hand, he's very handy, and my father was able to fix all kinds of things, and I always assumed that's just what men could do. It never occurred to me some couldn't. And then of course in about 20 years ago, when he bought a red pickup truck, I nearly died because my father had always had a red pickup truck. I'm like, what have I done? But, it was too late then. And but Jerry is very different from my family in that he is steadier and calmer and not so ready to, he's a slow boil, He doesn't get angry easily, but oh my God, when he does. And it's not an outburst though. So, and that's very different from my family. My family is instant, hollering, screaming, carrying on, so there was a lot of that. And as you were talking about your mother, I was thinking maybe one of the things that I'm like her is religious, religious.
Yeah, that's, my mother was very, religious, involved in the church. I mean, as much, I think, because of her sense of social, taking care of people, necessities. I mean, my mother was 40. Like I said, I'm the youngest of 7. My mother was 44 when I was born. I'm sure I was a surprise. And she had lived through the Depression, as my father had, et cetera. And so there was a sense of caring for people, and the church was a medium for that more than that she was certainly religious, but that was just that was like breathing the air there, just what people were. Somehow I never caught that, but but it's there.
And that was one of the differences that I struggled with when, in the beginning of our relationship, when everything seemed to be clicking and it was right and whatever, except religion. I thought, oh my God, I always expected to marry an ex-priest. I had no idea I was going to marry a Baptist pagan, and it's like, how is this going to work? But I decided, I don't care. Let's see. Let's see. But that was certainly an issue for me, but it has worked because I understood too that we did share the same values. We just didn't express them the same way. The core values were still there.
So do you go to Mass and?
No, that was the other thing. Pretty early on in the relationship, I realized I couldn't stay Catholic and go to Mass and all that without Jerry. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have that different a life.
But it's also true that when we do go for, weddings or funerals or whatever, she usually comes away pissed off at something the priest has said,
Yeah. Well, Catholicism abandoned me. I really do feel that. This would be another whole train of thought, but I am culturally Catholic. I will never cease being Catholic. I love much of what Catholicism offers. All the rest of my family are pretty faithful Catholics. But the misogyny of the Catholic Church and the turning away from women, that has just not been something I could deal with. So it wasn't that hard in a way to leave the church. but I still relish the rituals and the liturgical season and all of that. I like all that stuff.
And it seems to me that this Pope is really a breath of fresh air. I mean, when I think about him, I think about, oh, this is what Jesus said. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're really a Christian, you care about the poor, and this Pope is saying, oh yeah, there should be, maybe women can't be priests, but they should be more involved in the liturgy and that kind of thing. So I guess that's progress.
Oh yeah, well, it's progress, but it doesn't go in a straight line. Remember the last pope who was a mess. But yeah, that's true. Francis is a real gift, and the sister that I'm closest to is a very devout Catholic. She's been very excited about him. She's a much more open Catholic than many.
It's interesting because the previous Pope was really upset by the U.S. sisters who were progressive and said we need to pay attention to poverty and human needs, and they wanted them to shut up.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then let's not get started on the obsession with abortion, but there you go.
Well, but that's the Baptists probably share that too.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, abortion was always a Catholic thing, until the last 20 years or so. If I may talk politics, the Republicans have made it a Protestant thing,
Evangelicals.
Yeah, my people. I mean,
I guess there's some Baptist churches that are evangelical and some that are more high in their
there are a
approach.
few. There's one here in New Orleans that would fit that role, but there are not many. At least in the South. You ever spent any time in the South?
No.
Yeah. You're a California person?
Yes. But my mother was raised Southern Baptist, I guess, because they couldn't have wine and that kind of thing. But I just have to tell you the story. Her grandfather had his wife was a woman's Christian temperance union. She'd go to a restaurant. Do you serve liquor? Yes, ma'am. Goodbye. But he had wine and whatever hidden in their basement, and he would take special guests down to the basement to.
Where was this? What part of California?
That was in L.A. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
His name was George Lund. He was a kind of bon vivant physician married to this dour, stern Christian temperance woman person. They had 3 children, but I can't imagine what happened in between. But anyway, Jerry, you mentioned that the hormones are still going in mid-70s. How does one keep that kind of intimacy interesting and alive throughout the decades?
I don't know. I mean, it just seems, it's good for us, and we're still into it. I mean, we do, I guess, romantic things in terms of travel and, going out to eat and going to movies and, that kind of stuff. But, yeah, I don't know. You have a thought on that?
Well, I did try to think about that a little bit, and what I've thought about that historically, there was a time in our relationship when we began to be very experimental and self-conscious about keeping sexuality alive. We watched some videos on tantra and stuff like that, and played some of those games. But then after a while, a couple of years of doing that, it's like, we don't really need that. It's not really necessary. And, I'm afraid I can't explain it either, except that I will say, and I suppose this moves into advice, that, and I'm not sure it's hard to really be angry with someone that you make love to.
Because the oxytocin bonds you and all the feel-good chemicals are there.
So I've often found that that's really what what solved an argument or resolved conflict was just, we made love. And, it was like when we got up, things weren't so bad.
It's called make-up sex.
Yeah, I suppose that's what it was. I don't know. Did you have any reflections on that?
That's right.
Okay.
Look, it's an important issue because some of the people that I've talked to feel like they kind of lost that spark and don't know how to get it back.
Yeah, and I remember, I will say this, now this is a cue for you, really. At one point, we were like amazed that it was still so much fun. We were just having so much fun still. And I remember you were talking about writing about that the world needs to know this. I don't know. Do you remember that?
Yeah, like a lot of things that I thought about writing about. Of course, I never got around to it. But I'm not sure what to say about that. I mean, yeah, I thought about it, but I never did it.
Well, some people say that it's a chemistry thing, that either you have chemistry or you don't, and it's something, I guess, physiological or something.
I think there is some truth to that.
I think there's some truth to that, but frankly, I think it's not just that. I guess. I mean, yeah, that helps. That certainly helps, but it's like a flame or something that you also have to nourish it. You also do have to work at it a little bit.
And that means go on dates and do things that are romantic.
I think so, and also not let your angers and resentments get too big. Because I think that's a real deal breaker for intimacy.
Oh, sure. What's interesting to me is that men who do more housework have more sex because their wives are not resentful.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
That's
probably true.
Yeah, so cooking really pays off, Jerry.
Maybe that's it. The way to a woman's heart is through her stomach.
No doubt.
So where are you headed for in Hawaii? What island?
Well, we have the good fortune of having friends, California friends, who also have a condo in Honolulu where they're going to be while we're there, and we're going to visit them for a while and then go out onto the north shore of Oahu for several days and then go to Kauai for several days. We were in Hawaii 25, 30 years ago on Maui and the Big Island and had, it's one of those places we had such a wonderful time. We're afraid to go back because we don't want to ruin that memory, But Kauai is supposed to be very nice. You've been out there yourself. You got recommendations?
I'm planning a trip on Kauai to take my grandson in June. So yeah, we should share notes about good places. Yeah. For me, I'm a snorkel freak, so I look for good snorkeling places. Which Kauai is not the best, but I just haven't been there very much and think it would be fun to explore.
Well, have you done snorkeling in Hawaii? Because I'm not really good at it. I don't get to do it very often, but I love to snorkel. So where should I not miss?
Let me tell you after we're done.
All right. Okay.
Okay. So, do you think it's fair to say that opposites attract? That you're in some way opposites? Religion, extrovert, introvert?
Yeah. Yeah, we used to say we agree on everything except how to cook rice. Which is kind of a pretty good metaphor because Jerry measures everything.
I measure in time cooking rice.
And I just
throws water in there and boils it until she's ready.
But they both turn out fine,
Proof's in the pudding. So to kind of sum it up, what advice would you give to Jerry's niece or something who's thinking about getting married? Kind of a little capsule that you would write on their wedding gift or something. Make sure you think about this, this, and this, and be careful of this, this, and that.
Well, I think for many years I've always said, be sure you talk a lot and have good sex. I mean, really, I do think those are the things that seem most important to me.
And hire a housekeeper.
Oh, yeah, hire a housekeeper.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a high school student. It doesn't have to be some $25 an hour person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else, Jerry, besides hire a housekeeper?
No, I think talking and maintaining a intimate relationship is basically what's involved. And I don't know. I mean, I can't think right now. Wasn't thinking about giving marriage advice, but that is the advice we usually give.
Okay. Hire a housekeeper. Have good sex.
Yeah.
Talk.
Talk. Okay. Got it. Thank you.